Hi y'all little and big bites alike. This is Fluff Bite, and this is fluffvlog 4. So our last video is much longer than our regular Sunday uploads, but we wanted to not limit ourselves to our regular or more typical 20-ish minute videos, especially because writing analysis for anime has been a little bit harder, we found out, as this was our first attempt. Because so much video game stuff can kind of be sifted through rather easily, whereas every minute of anime is meticulous in a completely different way. I mean, the easiest way to say it would be that anime is all cutscenes. And, you know, comparatively, if you're looking at a video game, the cutscenes for like a game that like has a lot of cutscenes, but not so many that it's like its own movie, i.e. Metal Gear Solid or something, is gonna be like maybe 80% game, 20% cutscenes. And yet, we're really excited to do another one. But this week's video, or this Sunday uploads video, is gonna be about a video game again. We're gonna take our time with anime stuff because it just will take a little bit longer to make, and it's a little bit harder to manage. Evangelion is really important to us because of it reminding us of ourselves, and also reminding us of the problems that we have and that we're trying to overcome. And especially now as we're trying to work on ourselves, it's really important to have media in our life that is relevant to that and not a full-on escape. Because it's really easy to internalize media, and if it's media that just kind of just validates your biases or doesn't challenge you at all or make you think about yourself, then it's really easy for all your media consumption to basically just encouraging you to be on your own bullshit still, if you are experiencing an attempt of trying to be better or trying to change or whatever. Not to say that your media consumption is the only way that you can reflect on yourself and think about change, but the thing is, if you're like a huge nerd like we are and totally obsessed with media like we are, then media is going to be one of the ways in which you kind of communicate to yourself your values by what you watch, how you react to it, and what you continue to watch, especially if you're watching it over and over again, or on a pretty regular basis. Watching Evangelion every year is not uncommon for an Evangelion fan. Although this year we've watched it twice, which is kind of scary. Because Evangelion we really, really love, but it's also really hard to watch and really freaking painful. But also, because of how Ava is, we're not really scared about feeling like we, oh, I died. We don't have to worry about like, oh, are we being too critical or something. Because that's an easy thing to feel like you're stepping into with media analysis, because there's always a chance that you're like hyper focusing on this one thing and not really making good points other than what you yourself believe already, which goes into the whole thing about reconfirming your own biases with what you watch. Part of the reason we wanted to focus so much on mental health stuff for our channel is because there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential themes in media that touch on mental health stuff, but because so much of history has ignored disabled people and people who have certain issues, especially mental health issues, sometimes it's obfuscated in media, even though it's obviously going to be there, because just because someone is challenged by their circumstances with mental health doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that they can't do stuff. And so people who are struggling with stuff, like Hideki Anno, for example, are still gonna be making stuff, just like we make stuff. We're very surprised that we're able to keep a schedule, because it's been a long time since we've been able to do that. We're so glad we have you all support. It really encourages us to try more with each and every video. Push a little harder, you know? And to be honest, we weren't taking our mental health as seriously before starting this channel as we wanted to. Most of the time someone is gonna say something like, oh, like, I thought that things were gonna work out or things were gonna be better, and I didn't need to focus on my mental health because I was already doing great. But sometimes it's not that. Sometimes you're not working on your mental health because you don't think you can. And you fool yourself into thinking that you're too weak to change. It can be really disheartening. And it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, it usually is. That's the problem with Ava. Yay, I rescued the grubby. Or the problem with the characters in Ava. Because everyone has this tragic flaw of not fully listening to the other person, or they might have the problem of not really facing their own issues or not asking for help. I mean, a lot of stuff that happens with the characters in Eva can be maybe not solved, but definitely mitigated with better communication. That's for sure. And it's one of the few pieces of media that don't necessarily show a character getting better, but don't make it seem so much so that in them not being better, they failed. Although there are plenty of reads that people have done to say that, you know, Shinji is like a broken person and stuff. And I think it was partially because of analyses like that we wanted to make an Eva video that acknowledged all the messed up stuff that Shinji did, but doesn't condemn him so much so that if you feel so identifying with Shinji that to the transitive property, you are also a failure and you are also a broken human being. Because we have too much in common with Shinji not to sometimes feel that way. And we're sure other people feel that way too. It's actually kind of a really gratifying experience as a depressed person to understand that people struggle like you too. Because a lot of what someone's going to tell you, especially when you're younger and dealing with stuff like depression, is you're not alone, and a lot of people have these problems. And some people, even intellectually understanding, yes, I am not the only person with this problem, you can still feel quite alone. And even now, sometimes we will feel like, oh, even though I know other people are struggling in this exact same way, like I can see it all over my Twitter timeline, for example, it's still hard to deal with, because it can give you some comfort with the whole, you're not suffering in this really special way that no one can understand. But if you don't have the proper support, or you don't feel like you can reach out, then knowing other people are trying to too doesn't necessarily make you feel better, now does it? Which is also kind of the messed up thing about the Ava characters, because they can see the other characters struggling, but their empathy is not there. Or at one point it's there and then it disappears. A big part of getting better from being as messed up as Shinji, I guess, is stopping self-flagellation. And I think that that's a really cool concept to try to get over, because valuing yourself to the point where you're not trying to punish yourself anymore for your shortcomings is really refreshing. We have only experienced this in small doses, but we still experience it from time to time when you can talk to yourself about a failure or a shortcoming and not immediately go, I am bad, or I have to feel pain about this, then you're already one step closer to being at least a little bit better at self-regulating. Because what really hurts isn't just the pain of not being able to handle your own life, but also not really feeling like in control of it. And so self-flagellation can sometimes be an attempt to take control back of your life, because like at least I can punish myself knowing that I messed up and can't change the mess up. So something that's funny is that our video for this week is different from our Ava video, but has something really interesting in common, that it also includes talking about an abuser and how a character kind of picks up cues from their abuser that make them very similar. And maybe we are a little bit super interested in abuser dynamics in media, especially because so many characters come off as such, and it's not like no one talks about it. I've known folks who can't watch Rick and Morty because it reminds them of abusive situations they've dealt with, for example. But holy crap, is it hard to see it sometimes, especially when you feel really akin to the characters, because if you look up to a mentor character in fiction and then that mentor character does something really, really bad, you really want to forgive them, or you want them to have some sort of redemption or whatnot. Because a lot of stories will predispose you to caring about characters, especially the more on screen they are and the more they're aligned with the protagonist, the more you're gonna kind of want to root for them. And if you see those same patterns in people that you care about, then you might have a crisis in that even if you are noticing these bad things that the characters have in common with people in your own life, chances are you're gonna forgive them the same way you'd forgive the character. Now, this isn't a zero-sum game. That doesn't mean that media brainwashes you into only seeing people one way. But when you have media informing your life, it's gonna happen. Because if you're comparing yourself to characters a lot, it ends up that it's not just you seeing yourself in the character, you're projecting. Just like we were projecting with Shinji and Gendo. like we say in the essay, we we really wanted Gendo to have any good reason to act the way he did, and we completely understand why he did it once you find out, but it didn't make it better, and it definitely didn't make me feel better. It made me feel worse, especially when people were pointing out, oh yeah, Shinji's like his dad, and it's not even me and analysts even doing that. Characters in the show are like, oh, you're kind of like your dad, and it's like, how can I be like my dad? My dad's an asshole, but also I wouldn't know. He never talks to me. And I think one of the scariest things about being raised by an abuser, or an abuser having a huge effect on you, especially someone that you look up to, or someone that folks that you value look up to, is that it's hard to really know how much they're rubbing off on you and how much you can excuse yourself from that. And even after they're not in your life anymore, it's really easy to not be sure if your behavior is your own anymore, if you're just regurgitating what they've done. Kind of like when you see a bully do the same thing that someone who hurts them does. We remember watching one of the Land Before Time movies and seeing that for the first time, and was like, oh, your dad bullies you, so you bully people. That totally makes sense. In a really messed up sort of way. And so it's not or I should say, it is common knowledge that people tend to hurt people in the ways that they were hurt. So we really have love for the take care of yourself statement now. And it's funny because we used to freaking hate it. And not necessarily in reference to Evangelion, but in reference to the fact that it's a very common phrase when breaking up with someone and trying to be kind of cordial about it, or basically just knowing you're not going to see someone for a while and they're like, take care of yourself. It's kind of presupposes that you weren't taking care of yourself before. And it can be really rough to hear, and a lot of contexts in which we've heard it, not in just our own life but in media, has been less than great. And seeing it in Ava again reminded us of, I guess, the power of that statement, and that's why we reiterated it in the video. Because yeah, it can have those negative connotations too, but it's kind of what's necessary for a person to get better, especially if they're struggling with codependence. Because the problem is, you weren't taking care of yourself, you were relying on someone else to take care of you. Even if it was like an emotional component, even if it was like a joint effort. And just like Shinji can fall into this pit of despair and feel like he can't pick himself back up, it's really easy to feel like without the people you've been relying on, you're not gonna get any better, you're only gonna get worse. And that's a freaking scary thought, and it can push you to do really bad things. And that's also why hope is important. Because if you don't think you're going to get better, then you'll start using your suffering and your pain to excuse really bad actions. And that's how someone's bad behavior can escalate from I was hurt to they don't understand to it doesn't matter. And we've been there, but we've been able to pull ourselves out. It's a really melancholic phrase, to be honest. We definitely can't deny that. This is a food table. Let's see if we won't die this time. Oh boy, you're running. Okay. I run away now. Oh, it's a grubby. Ah. Oh, I'm protected. Ah. Okay. Well, I guess I'll be sorta cheap. Oh boy. I'm dead. I'm so dead. We don't have any other things sad to talk about. So, thanks for watching this kind of short fluff vlog. Just talking about the thoughts we've been having with certain things. It's amazing to be able to keep doing this. And we hope you look forward to our Sunday upload. It's going to be a doozy. Have a good one.